The caucus official stance is that it shouldn't be enforced by law. Like this shouldn't be a law enforcement issue. There's interesting arguments that could be heard from the pro criminalization side, and that it's really good for us to like hear each other out on those opinions. Hi, Jacob.
Hey, can you guys hear me all right? Oh, wait. Sorry. Can you guys hear me all right? Test, test, 1, 2.
I don't hear anything.
Oh, no.
Are you there?
I am here, but I guess you guys can't hear me.
Or is it just me?
Hold on.
I don't hear him either.
Okay. All right, good. So it's not just me. I was like, oh no, did I get disconnected from everyone? Okay, Jacob, I don't think we can hear you. Oh,
Test, test.
you have life.
Can you hear me?
I don't know what's going on.
Can you hear me now?
Are you there?
Hello?
Do you want to hop down and hop back up?
Yeah, let me try that. Sorry if you guys on YouTube, you get the experience. This is the problem whenever you try doing a Spaces and a YouTube stream at the same time is all sorts of glitches. So we're going to try this again.
Okay. Oh, I think he went.
How about now? I think I had the wrong mic selected. See, now I don't think anyone can hear me. Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, I had to go right from one stream to the other, and we're still having technical difficulties. It says I'm in there, but I can't hear anything anyone else is saying. I'm going to leave one more time. In fact, I'm going to exit out of X completely. I'm just going to like redo everything. So I'm going to get it working on this end here, and then I'll share it once it's working for you guys. So sorry, you'll have to just stare at my beautiful beard while I'm getting this working. If you guys have any questions once the space gets going, let me know, and I will present them in the space, by the way. Listen live. Test, test. Test, test. Still nothing? Ah. Hello, hello? Still nothing? Man, that is... Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out, guys.
Cass, I just sent you another invite because you were up here. Why does X Spaces do this?
I know. Can you hear me
Okay.
now?
Now she's like, when I push invite to speak, it's not doing it.
And they still can't hear me.
Jacob, can you talk yet?
I guess not. You can't hear me.
Oh, she said her connection was lost. So, okay.
How about now?
Jacob seems like he's still not able to. Come on.
All right. I might just have to do it on my phone,
While
unfortunately.
we're waiting for one of them to
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch profiles. You guys are going to watch it on me joining through the LCI profile.
Yeah. Hi, Cass. You want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the ministries you've been involved with?
Sure, yeah. Sorry about that. I lost connection because
really quick. By the way, you guys,
yeah,
she was not even on X before yesterday, so she's like a total normal person. And we're hearing somebody from the real world give, real world thoughts. And I'm just really thankful that she was willing to make an X account and join us today just for this conversation. So thanks, Cass. Go ahead.
Of course, yeah. Sorry, I got all ready and was all connected, and of course the dog. So yeah, Karen had just asked if I would share about a couple things that I've been involved with over the years. So a few years ago, when
you
I was
guys at
living in
least
the
hear
Midwest,
the spaces
I was
that's
involved
going
in a
on. Can you
ministry
give
called
me
Tapestry,
ones in the
and
chat
the sole
if you hear
purpose of
the
that
spaces?
ministry was to train up people in churches or people who just wanted to volunteer. And it was a very in-depth training, right? Because we were going into spaces that aren't always safe. So the purpose of it was to get groups of people together, also because you never go alone, but to go into bars and strip clubs and befriend the dancers, befriend the bouncers, befriend the bartenders. But the ultimate goal was to build a rapport with them so that we could let them know if they wanted out, there was a way out. So really powerful ministry. I was telling Kara, it's kind of hard to get going in some smaller towns because, it's like, what if somebody sees me going in, and, just kind of that stigma. And so, and then now I'm living in the South, and the church that I belong to here is buying tiny homes. And we've partnered together with another ministry that helps rescue women from trafficking and domestic violence and strip clubs and different, just different situations, and are able to put them in a home that's safe, help them get on their feet, offer them discipleship classes, and really help them, be with their kids if they have children, so they're not separated from their kids. And then B, just learn how to live a normal life. I mean, it's But I think the main thing, at least I see this as, it's a heart issue, right? We fix the heart issues and then can fix some other things along the way, maybe fix, but yeah. So those are just a couple things that I've been involved in that have been really powerful and successful, if they're done right.
I just think it's so incredible, the work that you've been putting in. And I just like, I want to see more Christians doing that kind of stuff. And thanks for sharing about that. And I want people to feel free to ask her questions too. But I think we got Jacob up here now. And Cass, we'll probably come back to that. I want to talk more about it. But I'd like Jacob to go ahead,
sure.
if we can hear him, if he can.
Test.
Oh my goodness, it's working. Let's go.
I'm literally here crying, trying to get this stuff.
I know. I was like,
I haven't
dead
done
silence.
this in a while, and my normal setup of doing it through my computer while also streaming apparently just wasn't going to work this time. So I'm still streaming it, but I'm joining through my phone. So it's kind of hopefully the audio is still okay, even though I'm joining through my phone. But yeah, at least I'm here now. So only 20 minutes late.
Yes. Okay. So I don't think we have anybody from the pro criminalization side yet. I know Amity had a thought. I don't know if you wanted to say anything else, Jacob, before we kind of continue, or.
Well, I could just say that, like, this kind of prompted. I don't know how much you. In fact, I was so busy trying to get things working, I might have missed some of what you said. But I know some of this has come up in our Discord, and even some of this has come up like in sort of like dialogues that have happened on X over the last few months. I know, like me and Jeremiah, who I like, but you know how social media goes, is that sometimes on social media, like things get heated and people take shots at each other, and so Jeremiah and I have had a couple heated exchanges. But I feel like there's two things here. On one hand, and this is less important, there are Christian libertarians who I think are sort of like so worried about biting certain bullets. And don't get me wrong, I understand the hesitation sometimes, right? Because you don't want to go to your Christian brothers and sisters, your pastors, and you don't want to like lead with like, I am a libertarian. I'm part of the Libertarian Party. And like, first thing on our platform is let's decriminalize and legalize sex work. Right? That's not how you want that conversation to start out. And I think it's okay as Christian libertarians to prioritize the issues and to speak to the issues that we think matter the most and that are going to be the most persuasive even. But when it comes to then like saying like, well, I guess we're libertarians but like not on these things because these things are sinful. Not only do I think that then it's a little bit dubious to call yourself a libertarian while you're doing that, but like forget that for a second, because that's not even a strong argument in this space, because no Christian is really going to put being a libertarian at the top of their concerns. It's not even always at the top of my concern. My concern, of course, is being a Christian, is following what the Bible teaches us about these things. And all I ask for in any of these dialogues, I always ask one question, and I just don't feel like I ever get a satisfactory answer on this question from the other side, which is that how do you distinguish between what is sin and what is crime? Now, clearly, anything that's a crime, anytime someone is engaging in criminal activity, in terms of what is objectively criminal activity, let me be clear, right? Like going to the park during 2020 was called criminal activity by the state, but clearly not actual criminal activity based upon any objective standard of law or ethics from a Christian worldview. But in terms of just our, to do a kind of like Christian political theology, starts with distinguishing between what is sinful and what is crime, and not all uh and all criminal activity is sinful, but clearly, I think just self-evidently almost, because they're two different concepts, right? Not all sinful behavior is going to be criminal behavior. And so we need a clear standard to distinguish between these two things. And I don't think that the people who are, and it's maybe not fair because they're not here to defend themselves, but I don't think the people who are on the pro criminalization of prostitution and sex work side are offering a good working framework or theory on why it isn't just sinful, on why it's criminal behavior.
Yeah, and I think I'm even sympathetic to that in a sense. It could be conceptualized as violating the NAP. I mean, it is a dark and like very tragic, sad thing when anybody is in in sex trafficking. And I think it's also even the same for like I guess they're called Johns, like whatever, the guys that are like consuming. I think that all around it's like a really sad, tragic thing. But one of the biggest hangups I have is even if you're saying that say it is some sort of NAP violation in a way, it's it's like impossible to enforce. I mean, at what point would it be called sex work? And like, is a guy that like, how would you determine a relationship between two people as well? He gives her a lot of money and he only kind of likes her because she's hot and they have sex. Well, is that sex work? I mean, I just feel like it's just such a high potential for abuse and like just like limitless gray areas that I just wouldn't want to give that power to the state. And like Cass said when she was talking, it's like such one of those heart issue things. And it feels like that's the more effective way without making our society overall less, subject to tyrannies of the state, because they will abuse anything they can when they have enemies.
No, I think it's 100% correct. Like, even if, because listen, there probably are certain times in sex work and sex trafficking where NAP violations are occurring. And I want to be clear here that when there is actual aggression, like, there are clearly people who are coerced into these things, right? And it can even be dubious, like it can be kind of a gray area sometimes, like, how it's not always overt coercion, right? Sometimes it's kind of a coercion by people who aren't like necessarily holding a gun to their head, but there's psychological manipulation. And so I do think that there are areas where I can admit that it can be a little bit muddy. But at the end of the day, I think we have to remember that law and that the civil magistrate, as it is the bearer of the sword, as the Bible says, it is a blunt instrument of force. And there are so many societal problems it is not equipped to handle. And so I think we have to sometimes flip the script and say, hey, I agree with you that I don't want to live in a society where there's tons of sex work and prostitution. I don't want to live in a city where there's prostitutes walking around the street while I'm walking out with my kids. Now, what do we do about that? And is law, and you're concerned, Kara, like beyond just could it be justified? Is it even a wise idea to try to do this? And what are the second and third order consequences we might not even foresee uh, when we decide that we're going to ban these certain things? Because yeah, I mean, as it's like, the other thing that I think there's like a kind of hypocrisy here, at least if you're talking about something at the federal level. And state level, maybe it's a little bit different, but I still think at the state level this applies. Like, to what extent are we going to, like, people who, at least 50% or more of them are, frequent flyers on the Epstein airlines, to care about enforcing sexual ethics, right? Like, there's just something there that's just kind of like, come on, like, clearly that can't be the right path forward. I think the right path, the best path forward as Christians, has to be with understanding. Same with abortion's a little bit different because we're talking about the ending of a human life, but we recognize this with abortion too. I'm gonna land here that while we do want to protect the life of the fetus, we also need to understand what's driving mothers to consider abortion. And that's why we have all of these crisis pregnancy centers all over the country to try to, like, help mothers out in those circumstances, to just make it easier for them to make the right choice. And I think that something there also applies to this conversation.
Thanks, Jacob. I think Amity was going to go a little while ago, and then we'll have Albert go right after her, and then whoever was next.
Thanks, Kara. So I have three kind of quick points I want to make as far as my position on this. So the first is from a Christian perspective. I'm of the camp that, I believe that Christianity is that we have free will, that, we're not God's puppets on a
Audio,
string.
guys. Can you guys give me a
He wants us to come to him,
thumbs up? Make sure the
of our
audio's,
own.
make sure the audio is good for you. Just give me a thumbs up.
There's other Christians that are not in that camp, but that's my belief as a Catholic. And, I feel like making laws that have no victim, we're just forcing our beliefs on someone instead of allowing them to have free will to, find their morality or not. I can't force someone else to be moral just because I might think something violates some sort of morality based on my religion. So that's my first position is, as far as free will, if there is no victim, then there should not be a crime. As far as NAP violations, I do see where, force or coercion are a NAP violation in and of themselves. That doesn't mean that prostitution or sex work is always a NAP violation. So if someone is, forcing someone, kidnapping someone, trafficking someone against their will, that would be a crime in and of itself. That doesn't mean that the actual act itself is a crime. I also think, I don't think the state really cares about this issue. After all, like pornography is legal. So if you put it in front of a camera and legitimize the business and pay taxes on it, then all of a sudden sex work is legal. But if you do it in a hotel room with cash without the state involved, then they want to criminalize it. So I feel like, they really don't care about the morality issue. They just want to make sure that they receive their tax revenue. And because, tax revenue is, coercion by the state to steal from unwilling participants, that's another reason that I think it should not be illegal. Also, real
Thanks,
quick,
Amity.
before I
oh.
mute the mic, Sarah just messaged me. She wants to speak as well, but she's having trouble raising her hand. So you may want to call on her as well at some point.
Okay, I just sent her a request to come up and speak. And then, Jacob, do you want Albert to go, or did you need to hop in real quick?
Albert can go first.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I totally agree with what Amity was saying. As Christian libertarians, I think we need to look at it from, well, both the libertarian point of view, which involves the non-aggression principle, but also from a biblical point of view. And that would involve looking what the Bible says about it, right? So from a libertarian point of view, well, we have the non-aggression principle. And so if you have a situation of prostitution where there's any kind of coercion, that would obviously have to be illegal and something that the state can get involved in. However, if it's a total victimless situation and there's no victim, then really the state shouldn't be involved. And frankly, I think that even if you look at all the Old Testament passages, I think that the Bible and that belief of the non-aggression principle applied to prostitution are in harmony, because nowhere in the Old Testament is there any law against prostitution. In fact, an interesting story is the story of Hosea and Gomer, where Hosea was basically commanded by God to marry a prostitute. And even though prostitution is condemned in the Old Testament, there were plenty of prostitutes in the Old Testament. And there's no indication in the Old Testament that the state outlawed it. It was just something that was considered sinful. It was considered something that the people of God should not be involved in. But I don't see any evidence of any kind of state interference with that. And I think that goes to the fact that prostitution is something that, again, as Amity said, and I think Carol also said, it's incredibly hard to enforce. And, the state cannot be God, and the state is not omniscient. And so it's an area, it's really bad rabbit trail for the state to get involved in that area anyway. So that's the utilitarian argument. But I think from a principled Christian argument, I don't see any basis for outlawing prostitution that is non-coercive. So just like to open up for other comments.
Thanks, Albert. Jacob, why don't you go real quick? And then I think it's Mr. Sand had raised his hand a bunch of times earlier. So maybe he can go after you. And then we'll go to a couple other people.
Yeah, I just have I think everything Amity said, and that Albert said really good. I wanted to add another point that I know that comes up a lot, maybe the pro criminalized side, which is they'll say, well, should we allow this stuff to happen on public streets where people are soliciting things? Should there be the same with should you allow pornography to be on if you're in New York City, there's a magazine stand? Should it be out there for just anyone to see? And on one hand, there's a reasonable concern there, which is that if you're out on public property, which kind of like all the taxpayers contribute to, and you just want to be out there walking with your kids, you don't want to probably see pornography out there in the open. It's not pleasant. It's not good for children. And you don't want to, the same way we don't want to have our streets covered in people who are shooting up different drugs. We don't want people to be out there soliciting their offering their services to people, to put it delicately. And I'm sympathetic to that concern because you can easily just say, well, they have a right to do it behind doors, but not to be out in the public streets doing it. That's still a different discussion. To just be like what should we do on public property, because there's just all sorts of things that come into that. But B, we just know that again the incentives are generally not in our favor on that discussion. Unless we live, put it this way, unless we live in a nation that is mostly comprised with Christians who wouldn't want that to be out there anyway, you're going to have a hard time winning that battle on the property line or public property front. And so I'm not saying we can't care about these things, but what should the focus be? I was once on this YouTube channel called Eschatology Matters. He was just like, listen, he's a Christian nationalist type. And he was like, listen, why can't we, keep the main things, preach the gospel, try to, be fishers of men, do all the things we're supposed to do, and leverage the government to pass laws to push society in the right direction. And I was like, but you just can't do that. Because it's just basic necessity and Austrian understanding that not just resources that are scarce, it's human time that is scarce. And anything you do, you're doing at the expense of something else. And so the inordinate amount of time it takes for lobbying and money and petitioning and doing things in the political process to waste time. I'm not saying we should not do anything in politics.
But we have
But
to
we have to
prioritize,
prioritize,
have
have laser focus with what we do,
so that
so
we're
that
not,
we're not overstretching ourselves
and
and
robbing
robbing
from
from
the things
the
that we
things
should
that
be
we
doing
should
in
be doing in
politics.
politics,
And
and
the
the most
most
important work of all,
is
which is
spreading
spreading the gospel
to
to
people,
people, because that's kind of
the
the
actual
actual
solution
solution
to
to all
all
of
this
this is
having a
having a
society
society
that is
that is
transformed
transformed
by
by
being
being
filled with
filled with
individuals
individuals whose
whose hearts
hearts
have
have
been
been
transformed.
transformed.
Thanks, Jacob. Mr. Sand, if you still had a comment you'd like to make, and then Sarah can go after that.
Yeah, I'll be quick. My hand kept going up, and then Amity covered it, so I put my hand back down, and then it went back up, and then Amity covered it again, so my hand went back down. But part of my position on this subject is: are we looking at this in reverse? Looking at it from top down with OnlyFans all the way back down institution. That's all.
Okay, you kind of cut out, and I wasn't, so I might have missed it, or I don't know if somebody else got that, but something about OnlyFans and top down.
Yeah, sorry. I can repeat it if I had a bad connection, but
Yeah, or
are
maybe
we
even like
looking?
expand a little bit, because I could just be not understanding too. I did miss part, but
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, there's an argument that I could see that could be made that OnlyFans is just another extension of legalized prostitution already.
mhm.
So if we're really having a discussion of decriminalization of prostitution, are we starting at the right point, or do we need to look at where we've gone to get back to the source? I don't know. Just a thought.
Well, so I think what you're saying is that
The
the minute you start talking about banning prostitution, where does that end? Because yeah, I think that could easily fall. You could make the argument that OnlyFans is almost like virtual prostitution, right? And then people don't realize how hard it is to even regulate human behavior just in general, let alone online, and just kind of like how much more of your privacy do you want to sacrifice to the government in the name of security and kind of like sanitizing culture to be a certain way. It's not that we have to like these things, but we have to not be given over to a reactionary mindset where we don't think critically about how we respond.
Thank you, guys. Sarah, go ahead and make your comments if you'd like.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. I feel like I stumbled upon this space, and I feel like it was kind of a God thing, because I am a Christian. I'm a libertarian. I'm also a survivor of sex trafficking. And in the state I live in, which is Colorado, they are looking to decriminalize prostitution. So when I saw this, I wanted to jump on, and I want to thank you for having this space. I don't know if you discussed this before I jumped into this space, but one thing you probably should know is that when prostitution is decriminalized, human trafficking increases. In fact, it goes through the roof. And it's actually not a victimless crime, because coercion is always involved in prostitution. There's only less than 5% of the cases where it's true choice and true so-called sex work. And what happens is in cases where it has been decriminalized, law enforcement is taken out of the picture. And when law enforcement is taken out of the picture, it becomes a really, really sad way of life for someone who's constantly being raped and controlled. And, the average person out there might think it's a victimless crime because I see her on a street corner. Well, what you don't see is the pimp behind the door beating the shit out of her, saying, I'm going to kill your daughter if you don't get out there and make some money. So the buyer on the street's like, hey, she's doing it. She's wearing this short skirt. She's telling me she'll get in the car with me. She's saying, it's not like that at all. It's absolutely not like that. It's actually so incredibly sad. And so when we take law enforcement out of the picture, we can't arrest buyers, and buyers are rapists. They're rapists. And most of the time, this, prostitution it's not even a choice. In fact, even when you look at strip clubs and the numbers, that's not a choice either. There's at least 50% of those girls in strip clubs are being sex trafficked and forced to do things against their will. And I don't even like to share statistics, actually. I'm just trying to give you some general numbers because most of these cases are highly underreported. So if anyone quotes statistics to you, you should think in your mind the number is actually much, much higher. And strip clubs are legal if you're over the age of 21, but sex trafficking still happens because same thing. She walks out the door at the end of her night, didn't make enough money because $900 a night or $1,000 a night isn't enough. So she's forced to go in the back room and do these despicable acts that are basically rape, because when you're not consenting, it's rape. It's not choice. So from my perspective, it is very, very dangerous. I hope this never happens. And I'm going to have to do a lot of work to prepare for fighting this when it comes to what's going to happen in Colorado. It's so much more sad than anybody realizes. And I just think that if we really want to get to the heart of trafficking and rape and just the most vile actions that happen, taking law enforcement out of the picture is one of the worst things we can do, because if we have law enforcement, if we can arrest a buyer, we can also get that so-called prostitute some help. And I don't want to even call her a prostitute because most of the time she's not. And that is when the gospel of Jesus Christ comes to the picture. That is when Jesus, who is the ultimate healer and physician, can help heal that survivor's heart and life and help restore her to the point that she can't ever be controlled or threatened again. And it's so much more complicated and sad than what the media will tell you. So thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah, Sarah, go ahead and stay up just in case there's some more you'd like to respond to. And thank you. So I'm glad you found our space, and I really appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable and open up and share your very personal perspective. So really thank you for that. I think that Jacob and Amity both had some things to think about with what you said. So I'll let them go ahead and continue the conversation. Go ahead. I think Jacob went first, or depends on which one of you wants to go first.
I guess I
really
really do want to give Amity a chance to ask questions and say some things too. I mean, first of all, yeah, my heart goes out to everything you just said, and
it is sad.
It is sad. I did try to make mention to the fact that
there are,
and
I'm
not an expert on being able to say what the percentages are, but yeah, there are cases where it's not voluntary, and I think that we need to distinguish between do we want to criminalize and make illegal
and open up the can of worms
of again second third order consequences that we talked about already. The bottom level transactions.
But that doesn't mean that
we
I don't think that's the same as saying we should remove law enforcement from the equation entirely. I guess my understanding of how a lot of these things generally work is that the black market effect of banning these things generally, I think, trends towards not keeping law enforcement more involved in it, and people feel sort of trapped, like they can't go and say, I'm in this abusive relationship, I'm being coerced into this because it's an illegal activity. Whereas when we take even something as something as simple as sex work, when we take that off of the black market, it's not that suddenly the potential for aggression goes away, but the incentive structures of things being done not in that black market setting actually, I think in the long term trend in the direction of less abuse. It's not always going to be an immediate thing, but in the long term they trend towards less abuse is happening because more people are willing feel less trapped if I come forward, I'm engaged in this criminal behavior too. So now I have this psychological hurdle. Like it's so much harder for me to come forward and say anything. So yeah, I think that was the main thing I wanted to I guess pose as a not so much as a rebuttal, but just because I hear your heart that there is I think that
I
there are
think that there are
libertarians
libertarians who are libertines
who
who
completely
completely whitewash
just
everything
said,
you just
and
said,
I don't
and
want to
I
do.
don't want to do that.
I
I
definitely
definitely think you're
think
speaking
the
to the truth of the matter that there is abuse, there is coercion,
and that's
and that's
definitely something
definitely
that we
something
as
that
Christians
we
should
as
be
Christians
against.
should be against.
And there is a
And there
legitimate
is a legitimate role for government and law enforcement to be involved there.
but the right
But
way
the
to go
right
about
way to
doing
go
that,
about doing that, I think,
I'm not sure
I'm
that that
not sure that means
criminalizing it, even at the
criminalizing it, even
buying
at the
behavior.
buying
You know,
behavior. You know,
criminal intent's
criminal
also
intent's
hard
also
because
hard because
it relies on
it relies
intent.
on intent.
So
So
I would be a
I
little
would
bit
be a little
hesitant
bit
to say
hesitant
that
to say that
anyone
anyone who,
well,
you know, now certainly they're sinning against God,
they're sinning
they're
against
sinning against
themselves,
themselves,
and
and they
they're
are
committing
even they're committing adultery. They're sinning against
woman
that woman
if they
if they
or
or
man
man
if
if they buy a prostitute.
um
Um,
I don't know
I
that it
don't know that it
rises to
rises
rape
to rape
because
because
it
it
requires
requires that kind
mens
of
rea
mens rea of like
they'd have to
they'd
have
have to have
the
the knowledge of
knowing
knowing that that person
is not
is
acting
not
of their own
acting of their
free
own free will
accord.
accord.
But that's
But that's
another
another
it's another
it's another
layer
layer on
the
the
depravity
depravity of the situation
that needs to
that
be
needs to
spoken
be
about
spoken
for
about
sure.
for sure.
Go ahead, Amity.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Sarah, thank you for sharing that. I want to be very sensitive to your experiences and also, and this is public knowledge or public, she's made it public, so she won't mind me mentioning my niece was a heroin addict when she was a teenager and she got caught up in prostitution before she got clean. And um, while it was something that under the influence of drugs, she felt like she was doing this willingly. Obviously, if she had not been under that influence, she would not have sold herself to, get her fix. But there were definitely men who took advantage of that and used that for their own financial gain. And I think that's where we get into the issue of NAP violations. And like Jacob said, because this is an illegal activity, my niece was afraid to come forward and ask for help because she would land herself in jail. Many times she ended up in the county jail because she was caught, um, uh, you know, selling herself to get money to buy heroin. And if this was a legal activity, I feel like, when there's not a black market, it empowers women who feel like they're trapped in this cycle to come forward because then they're not going to be thrown in jail. But I definitely agree that, the people coercing women into this against their will have some responsibility. I do also want to say, Sarah, and uh, my apologies for this, but I just want to understand. You say the buyers are rapists. If they don't know that this woman is not a willing participant, I I don't really see how they would be able to be charged with rape if she is telling them yes. So I feel like that might be a slippery slope to go down as well. And please give me more insight if you have it. But I just feel like that a lot of men who if they're being told yes, then I really don't feel like they should be charged with rape if they think that it's a willing act. However, morally, of course, as Christians, that's not the area I'm talking about. I'm talking about specifically criminality.
Yeah, and I think everyone is making some very valid points. And Amity, I really feel for the story you told about your family member. I have a family member who's actually still involved in prostitution. She's doing it by choice. The reason she's doing it by choice is because she was trafficked as a child. She became an addict, and the only way she can fuel her addiction as an adult is to prostitute herself. Those kinds of cases actually are different than someone forcing you to do it. And I know that there's not a lot of choice with addiction. Those people need help. I do totally get that. But with regards to people who are in that world, so to speak, women who could be sent to jail for doing this or in some other way pay a price. And what I want you all to know is that there are some nonprofits out there who actually specialize in offering pro bono attorney work to survivors of this, because we recognize that there isn't choice involved and she shouldn't be in jail, and we need to get this scrubbed off her record and go after the person who's selling her or who has coerced her or is somehow benefiting from her basically selling her body and being violated so that someone else can profit. And just because she's given a few dollars here or there does not mean it's choice, and she should not go to jail. If someone is not doing this by choice, and there's so many psychological components, it's very difficult in this particular situation to define choice. It's not like I feel like smoking a cigarette and I'm going to do it. It's like you're either putting a gun to my head, or you're beating the crap out of me, or you're threatening to kill a family member, or you're threatening to provide me. You're in some way, I am being so heavily threatened and the world can't see it, but that is what's happening. So if you do what you're told to do because you're being heavily threatened, obviously you shouldn't go to jail. That's mean, cruel, and awful, and it furthers the abuse. But I want you to know that there are nonprofits out there, and if anybody who's listening to this space needs help finding an attorney to help get something expunged from their record, if they've been a victim of this and being told that this is prostitution, they need help legally. That is very unfair. They should not have to live with that on their record, and there are options. But at the same time, I just want people to know that it is not, I mean, I understand the OnlyFans argument. I actually do, and I understand the pornography argument. The pornography argument, though, is a little tricky, because with pornography, that also involves a lot of trafficking. And what I mean by that is, if let's say you're a man or a woman and you really enjoy watching porn from your home, that's your choice. You want to do it. It's legal. Well, did you know you're watching a 5-year-old get raped? In fact, you can go on Pornhub and Google 5-year-old child screaming while being raped, and a video will pop up. So, there's different levels of porn, and there's watching porn from the privacy of your own home, which, could be considered a free thing to do. But when someone who is filming porn does it against someone's consent, especially in a rape situation, and then uploads it onto a porn site, that's a whole different argument in terms of violations. But this space is about prostitution and whether or not it should be legalized. And I'm just wanting people to know that it is so complicated. There's so much brainwashing that is involved. And most prostitutes, even though it's a very small percent that are doing it on their own volition, most of them were sexually abused as children. And in their mind, they don't have a choice. They don't know what they're doing in life. They're severely broken. They need someone to circle their arms around them and tell them about God and show them there's a better way of life. And those are the ones that are doing it by choice. But like I said, is it really choice when you've been brainwashed, when you were violated from the age of 3 and you don't know any better? Or do we need to help these people instead of increasing the numbers? And like I said, well, maybe I didn't say this, but I don't know that we should be making policy to accommodate 2 to 3% of prostitutes who are doing it by choice, when over 95% of them are actually being trafficked. It's so complicated, and it's worthy of actually a follow-up space because of how complicated these issues are, and what can we do about it? And as Christians, how do we love people on the other side of this? And how do we lobby our elected officials with the truth so that they know that this is not a victimless crime?
Thanks, Sarah. Jacob, let me just jump in real quick, and then you can go next if you don't mind. I just wanted to say something kind of in relation to what Amity mentioned, and what Sarah has been saying, is that I find a lot of overlap with drugs and criminalizing or decriminalizing drugs with this issue, because like you kind of look at drugs and say, well, it's not victimless, because people that use drugs, like, they could have been introduced to them at a young age, or like whatever the dealer you could say is responsible. But one of the things is with that, and like, some of the enforcement and these things that you're talking about, these horrible things that these women go through, I think these are like associated actual crimes with like sex work. and pornography, those things are like actual crimes, I think, that you're talking about. Like anytime like a child is involved, anytime something is happening against someone's consent, that definitely should still be considered criminal. I think we're like narrowly focusing on the transaction between the two people, a consenting transaction. But beyond that, like lay down the hammer. I mean, I think like if you've done anything non-consensual to somebody, there should be drastic consequences for that, especially when it comes to this kind of stuff. And like even with like drug use, it's like, well, I don't think we should punish people for using drugs, but as soon as you start like stealing to support your habit, or even like defecating on a sidewalk, like there should be. And I think these natural consequences that come from the associated crimes are like a really important thing that we need to pay attention to. Not to get off topic on drugs, but like in California, for example, like they kind of stopped prosecuting basically if you didn't steal over like $900. And of course, like crime is getting worse, drug use and homeless, it's all getting worse. And it's like, well, maybe if we didn't let people do the actual crimes against people and property, they'd be forced to face some of these other problems. So I definitely think a lot of those things you say that are like so horrible and tragic, we definitely need to address, like any coercion, all of that. If it can be shown that there has been coercion, I think that, of course, someone needs to go to jail, and it's definitely not the girl that was the victim. Go ahead, Jacob, and then Amity.
Yeah, those were all really good points from both of you, from Sarah and you, Kara. I think that
there is a
way. Now, granted, like
I'm going to
say this with the preface of like we're libertarian, so we know that trying to get our politicians to write laws
in smart ways
is
pushing a rather big rock uphill. But there is a way to pass laws on this, which that like actually are soft on the part that don't have a victim, but that actually then increase the actual exposure and response on the actions where there clearly is a victim, where there is coercion happening. And I think that's what's so, just to kind of zoom out a little bit, that's what's so screwed up about our society right now, is that it's one of the things that we have a justice system that is literally inverted of what the biblical model is. Because we like, as a libertarian and a Christian, I'll sometimes be told I'm soft on crime. But that's really not the way I view it. It's like I think there's a lot of things that we prosecute that I just don't think are crimes. But when there's an actual crime, when someone's actually committing aggression or coercion, I don't want to be soft on that at all. I'm not a pacifist, and I Bible uses the language of that he's an avenger. He wields the sword to almost be a vessel of God's wrath on the wrongdoer. So now because of that, I'm very wary about which I think you would appreciate, Sarah. That and I appreciate that. I would like you, if you don't mind, if you go to my profile when this is done, or the LCI profile, maybe you could email me, because I'd love to even follow up with you on some of this and get some of your resources and insight on this to cover it more. But in terms of like the not just the statistics, but the nonprofits that kind of lobby to help the women who have been trafficked not to have this stuff on their record. And I think that's really good. I just think that what we need to do is to kind of like make that easier. Like we need to make it easier for women who are being trafficked, who are being coerced to come forward and not be further victimized by the state, because I just think that's even at that point we're just making it even worse. That these people have been through all this trauma and all that, and double down on that by now the state's throwing them in jail for something. Because you're absolutely right. Like and you're right too. Like there's this tension of like to some extent people are making free choices, but there's also psychological trauma and things
and things that people go through from young ages that affects their choices. And so,
yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
above all, I
I
think
think
we'd all agree we just need to pray to God for our nation and for people to turn back
to him
to Him and for the gospel to
transform
transform people's lives and
get
fixing our criminal justice system that is
literally
literally perverted,
inverted
inverted
the standard
of justice is
absolutely
absolutely
necessary on this point.
Thanks, Jacob. We're going to go Amity and then Zane and Albert. Just real quick, just like Jacob was saying about the resource, if you wouldn't mind like putting in a comment under the space, Sarah, like a website or name of the nonprofit, that would be really helpful. And I'll put it in the Jumbotron. We should even like maybe say it out loud in case people listen to like the audio later, because I know this is being streamed and I don't know if like, then people that are just listening, they would be able to hear it too. That would be really awesome. Go ahead, Amity.
Yeah, this will just be really quick because I feel like we're piggybacking on each other's answers and, everybody's making such good points. I feel like, you were talking about, laying the hammer down on this. Well, the problem is, quote unquote, justice gets enacted on the poor and especially women when it comes to this. The state feels like, oh, let's pat ourselves on the back. We've taken care of this transaction and, criminal, given somebody a punishment for it, thrown this woman in jail or whatever. But, anything that is, anything that has a fine that the rich can buy their way out of means it's legal for a price. And so, the rich can get out of this. The state doesn't feel like they've committed something so violent that they need to be put behind bars. And the women who are poor and don't have the resources to fight it are the ones that end up sitting behind bars. And so, the predators, the ones who are trafficking and who are coercing these women are the ones who get away with it. And, that's just another argument for decriminalization.
I just to clarify real quick, Amity, I don't know if there was a misunderstanding, but I didn't mean put the hammer down like on like all sex work. I was talking about like when somebody actually like when there is a rape like that can be prosecuted, or when there is that kind of stuff, like the associated actual crimes. I'm not saying lay down the hammer on like on like in a broad scope. I
understood you.
Okay. So you don't think
I was
that's
just
a good idea?
I was just kind of playing off that analogy.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, no, I don't.
No, I totally got you.
Good. Okay, as long I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I was like, I saw what I meant.
Yeah, I feel like we're actually all more on the same page than like maybe it might have seemed. I feel like we all want the same thing. We want people who haven't actually done anything violent or aggressive to not be punished, and people who have to be punished. And it's just a matter of like, we live in a fallen world with a fallen government system that's corrupt and all these things, and we have to have these conversations to shed light on the areas where people are being abused and figure out how to advocate for them and advocate for them in the here and now and advocate for changes that benefit them in the future.
Yeah, let's go to Zane and then Albert, and then I wouldn't mind also getting back to Cass and hearing more about some of her experiences, like how it went when she was like going into these strip clubs and stuff, and like maybe like what was effective, what wasn't, like were these women afraid, like what was the range of reactions that you were getting? So I'd like to get to that after, if that's all right. But we can start with Zane, because he's had his hand up for a little bit, and then Albert.
Right. So I think the comparison to drugs and alcohol is especially apt because historically we've seen that whenever the state comes in and criminalizes criminalizes drugs or alcohol, then the type of person that goes into that industry are the sorts of people that are the most likely to be violent and coercive. So like with prohibition, you had the organized crime syndicates coming in and being the only people to be in that industry. And then when they had disputes, instead of being able to go to law enforcement, they shot each other in the street, because if they went to law enforcement, then it was illegal, so they couldn't do that. And similar with drugs, where it's all the cartels are in the only place you can get drugs is from these extremely violent cartels. And so and what do the police do in these situations? They're usually not actually going after the cartels, because that's too hard. They're going after the random people on the street who are the most in need of help and the least in need of being sent to jail, but the police are going after them and not going after the people that are actually causing the violence and the coercion. And I think something very similar is going on in this case as well, where the laws as they currently exist are causing the police to go after the people that are easy to get, which are the people on the street corner, and neglect the people that are actually doing the human trafficking, because that's too hard. So I think there's actually a very interesting parallel here to Oregon's experiment in drug decriminalization, because they decriminalized drugs, I think, a couple of years ago, and they're about to roll it back because of how unpopular it is. And the reason it's so unpopular is that not only did the police say we're not going to arrest people for doing drugs, they also have not been arresting anybody for all of the associated offenses that you would do if you were on drugs and out of your mind. So there are just all these random people, defecating in the streets, sleeping on park benches, committing petty crime, or it's not their idea of decriminalization is decriminalizing the entire lifestyle of being a drug addict, which we obviously can't have. So we need to be laser focused on, okay, the police need to be stopping the violence and coercion. And if they could just do that, then we'd all be in a better place to actually get help for the people that really need the help.
Yes, thank you, Zane. Go ahead, Albert.
Yeah, I think what Zane said is really apropos, that whenever government makes regulations to regulate a certain area or outlaw certain product or activity, then those who are hurt the most are really the low-hanging fruit. And the powerful and the rich tend to get away with everything. And I think you see that very much in the area of prostitution. And I think Exhibit A of that is the whole Epstein situation, where all these rich millionaires who went to Rape Island, they got away with this for years on end. And what is the police? And these guys were protected by the law, by the prosecutors and other people. Well, thankfully now, thanks to a libertarian, Thomas Massey, who put the discharge petition out, hopefully some of those people are going to be brought to justice. So it's really important to distinguish between a victimless crime and a crime where there's a situation where there is a victim. The other thing I want to say about this is that unlike the war on drugs, which was federalized and became a federal issue, unfortunately, the area of prostitution is still a state issue. And that's the best situation you can have, because first of all, it comports with federalism, but also you get to kind of examine what happens in a situation where a state, let's say, criminalizes it and a state that doesn't. And you have two models in the United States. You have the model of Nevada, which pretty much decriminalizes prostitution. And then you have the rest of the states, which one, to a certain degree or other, has criminalized it. And I would think, and from my knowledge of the situation in Nevada, it doesn't seem to me that I'm sure that in every state, and even in Nevada, there are situations of coercion. But it seems to me that the way it's going around in Nevada, it seems mostly consensual. I may be wrong on that, but even assuming that 95% of it is not consensual, you still have to make that 5% exception. And you can't, violate the non-aggression principle by criminalizing that 5% either. So, I guess, that's what I've got to say.
Thanks, Albert. I was hoping that Cass would be willing to share a little bit more about her experience, especially in the one you were in up in Iowa, where you were going in. Were you doing that at Okoboji?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, okay. I want to hear about this.
Yeah. So yeah. First, I want to say thank you to Sarah for sharing, and I'm sorry that has been your experience, but glad that you're on the other side of it. But I can tell you, and agree with Sarah that as much as a lot of these women may appear that they are consenting to this, it is because of the threats. It is because of the, the pressure that's there for whatever reason they got involved in it. And I know a lot of people don't like to even say sex work and say sex trade, and that's really what it is, right? It's a trade for something. Like, there's a supply and demand, again, because like I said before, it's a heart issue. There are people that have deep wounds on both sides, as a buyer, as someone who's giving their body away. So a lot of what we saw, so I did this in a small town in Iowa, in Okoboji, where we would go in and go into the strip club and befriend people. And that's where it starts, right? It starts with just building reputation. We would take the girls, the dancers, baskets with like some chapstick, perfume, Starbucks cards, whatever. And basically the idea was to steer away from this, where they'd have to go to the cops to get out or whatever, to not involve law enforcement, to not need a lawyer, to not need any of that stuff. We would offer them, like, here's a phone number. If you want out, we will help you. We will move you. We will do whatever it takes. But you have to build that reputation with them, right? You have to go in every weekend, sometimes Fridays and Saturdays, and it's different girls, and they're moving these people out. I remember, so I was actually working, this is really funny. The strip club where it's at in Okoboji is butted right up to Okoboji Bible Conference Ministries, which is a ministry that's open in the summer. And so I actually worked on those grounds, but then did ministry in the strip club. And so at night,
they're literally neighbors to the strip club.
Like they share a parking lot, and the lawns touch. But I would see them at night, like I'd be working and I would see them bring van loads, literally, of women. And I'm like, there's no way all those ladies are getting up on stage. And so you know exactly what's happening in the back of that building, because they're not all getting out there dancing, but they are selling their bodies, and people are coming in there for multiple things other than just watching a girl on the stage take her clothes off. So, I mean, I didn't personally ever, get that phone call like, hey, help me, I need out. But there was definitely, I know there was a gal that did reach out. She ended up getting pregnant. By who? The Lord only knows. And so I don't remember where she went or how they did it, but they helped her. And the ministry originated in South Dakota. So the gal who does the training does it in different areas of the Midwest, where they try to help these areas that have clubs. And then the ministry, I'm not personally involved yet, because I'm fairly new to this area and this church. And so I'm not sure how they get these gals out of trafficking or domestic violence. They work with another ministry that does that, but then my church helps purchase these tiny homes so that, again, they can go somewhere without having to get law enforcement involved. Someone helps them out of the industry, out of the trade, and into a home where they can stay. If they have children, they can stay with their children, get on their feet. They're mentored. They're offered discipleship classes. They're brought to church. They're given meals. Like, It's a whole thing so that they can learn how to live properly in society the way the Lord would want them to, and go through, you know, mental health counseling and trauma counseling, and you know, become a healthy, God-fearing person, you know? So not easy work, very hard to see what happens in that industry. Yeah, it's wild, but really cool, obviously, on the other side, when you can see the women that have made it out and trying to walk out their salvation with fear and trembling, and you know, growing in the Lord. And so that side of it is beautiful for sure.
Thank you for sharing all that. I don't know if anybody has like a last minute comment or maybe a question or anything.
Yeah, I do. And I'm not trying to interrupt. So
Go ahead.
the next time I'm on a space, I'll get some coaching for someone of how to raise my hand. I just suck when it comes to technology. So thank you. I wanted to go ahead and follow up with you. And since I know Amity and I'm a huge fan of hers, I might follow up with her too. But when you requested information on nonprofits and some of the organizations that can help people who need to have their records clear, or pro bono attorneys, I will follow up on that. But I wanted to let you know, and anybody else listening, that this is a whole different topic and we don't have to explore it, but I'm just putting it out there so that you know I'm a person of my word. There is a significant amount of ethical and abuse issues when it comes to aftercare anti-trafficking organizations. And the person who was just speaking about the church or the ministry organization that is doing so much work, that sounds so wonderful that it almost made me cry. And I'm so grateful for that. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations aren't like that. And I have been a survivor of 2 anti-trafficking organizations. Both of them re-exploited me. And because there isn't any training to get in this field, and there are no ethics or best practices, you have a lot of times people who get into this field that re-exploit the survivors in their own care and make things worse. So the reason I'm sharing that is because I want you to know that I can't send you a list of anti-trafficking organizations that I respect, but I will follow up with information. And anti-trafficking work and establishing ethics in that field is my area of focus, because there are so many problems. And once we reach someone, we don't want to re-exploit them. We don't want to leave them with less hope than how we found them. And so we must clean this area up. And like I said, that's a different topic for a different space, but I just wanted to let you know that I want to offer information to whoever's requesting it, but I also need to let you know that we have a significant problem in this country with aftercare anti-trafficking organizations. And so the list that I would recommend right now, there are only 2 in the entire country. And I am sure there are other good ones out there, but unless you're intimately involved, like the woman who was previously speaking, she knows, right? She knows good things, firsthand experience. And with me, being a client, seeing the forms that are signed, seeing how things work behind the scenes, you actually don't know what's really happening with these organizations unless you're inside as a volunteer or as a client or something, because these organizations, unfortunately, are very deceptive in the way they post on their website. And a lot of them post like they're Christians, but their actions don't support that. So I just wanted to put that out there so that when I give you limited information, you'll know it's because this is an area I'm actually working on and hoping to expand the list as time goes by, but it's a work in process.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And I feel like you've planted a seed, and I'll see where it goes, for us maybe having like some sort of follow-up space that kind of can even explore that a little more. I think we got to kind of start wrapping it up. And I appreciate, Sarah, I'm so glad you came. I'm glad that some of us got like that insider, view that you have that we can't just imagine on our own. Because I think there's just so much nuance and things to consider on a topic like this, and we shouldn't take it lightly. And it's good to hear, views that are a little different from our own and really talk them out. And I think when it comes down to it, we all really have a lot of common ground. I think most of us are pretty much in the same boat. Would appreciate resources that we could like post and share. And Jacob, did you want to say anything else too?
Not too much. I agree with what you said, and yeah, I'll just re-echo to Sarah if she wants to um, reach out to my email address is in my bio, so that's the best way to reach me, or you can just DM me too. But I would love to follow up in some capacity. Thank you for joining us, and yeah, I think more conversations like this are good. Um, I guess I can just plug that like this is what I try to do with what I'm doing with the Libertarian Christian Institute is like, and with the Christian Caucus is that we Christians need to get together with each other and with even non-Christians and have discussions like this that kind of get to the heart of like, how do we create a world that uh kind of honors that biblical model of justice and that allows us to, better serve Christ in the areas that we are all put in. And so, um, the so yeah, I just encourage everyone to, if you like this stuff, please follow the Christian Caucus, of course, and follow LCI as well, because this kind of intersection of faith and politics is, really what both organizations in different ways are trying to bridge and talk about. I think it's kind of a thing that's been missing in our society and even in Christian discourse, especially for a long time. And it is very edifying to have this kind of discussion uh, go so well, and that there's a desire to dig deeper. So I'm very thankful for everyone who showed up and that was a part of it.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple of things real quick. For one, I know Cass is kind of considering her position in the political world. So, as this is probably her first time talking to a bunch of libertarians, I don't think there could have been a better situation. This is great because it was,
Could have gone
nice.
so much worse.
Yeah. So we didn't. I know we didn't scare her away. We'll let her get like feel comfortable enough first before we let her see the rest of libertarian world. But I would like to plug one more time that we are trying to get rid of that sex work standalone plank in the platform that talks about decriminalizing it, and it has like its own tab, and it just feels, you can just tell by reading it, was put in and promoted by the more libertine type of libertarians that are actually just like, want it to be a very normative thing. And we don't want that. And I think it would be such a great little tangible win for culture in the Libertarian Party that I think is also attainable. So reach out if anybody's here now or listening and you'd like to figure out how you can help us with that endeavor. We'd really appreciate it. We also have a Discord and an email list with not too many emails, just try to keep it to essential communication, but we can get you on there as well. Go ahead and you can DM Christian Caucus. And the last little plug is we absolutely love the pro-life Libertarian Caucus. They've done such great work, and that's like our brothers and sisters or our cousins or something over there, because our causes are greatly overlapped. And like we did presidential interview spaces with them in the past, and they have had a tangible win go all the way through by getting the abortion plank removed on the LP platform. And that's just absolutely incredible. Major props. And definitely be in touch with them if you like also what Libertarian Christian Institute and the Christian Caucuses are doing. Go ahead and get in touch with them as well. So I love seeing all the Christian libertarians. This is great. If anybody has any last minute thing, Amity, now's your chance.
Nope, I'm good. Thanks for letting me speak. And I think it's a really important issue. And I appreciate everybody.
Yeah. Albert, did you want to say anything before we sign off?
No, I think it was a great discussion. I think it's a very important discussion to have, and because it affects not only this issue, but how we view other things like the war on drugs and other issues involving the non-aggression principle. So, yeah, I think it was great. And thank you all for participating.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Alrighty. Well, thank you everybody for joining me for that. I'm sorry that it wasn't as smooth as I wanted it to be as far as hosting a space. 'Cause I haven't done these in a while, and so I probably need to do a trial one again to figure out how to make it so that both my streaming and the X spaces will pick up from the same mic, or maybe I can't do that anymore. I used to be able to do that without a sitch, but that I don't think that went the way I was expecting it to go, but it was really good because we had not even so much a debate, but just a really, really edifying, really in-depth conversation, kind of exploring the nuances of this and why it is complicated, right? But what isn't complicated is the core truth, which is that we need Christ. We need people to have their hearts transformed. We need to turn away from what is evil and towards what is good. Make sure you follow us here at the Libertarian Christian Institute and support what we're doing if you don't mind. We're in that, kind of end of the year fundraising kind of mode to support everything we do to just, make it, I mean, just to be completely transparent. This is just the brutal honesty of what it means to do stuff like this, is that it requires money. It requires, equipment. It requires time. And we're passionate about doing this work. And, it's a nonprofit and a lot of us volunteer a lot of time, but we still need money in order, money is a tool. And God has been so generous with us, and you all have been generous with us over the past couple of years as we have continued to grow. And just please continue to support us into the future, because I think that this is an essential component of spreading the gospel in this broken world and promoting a freer society, a more prosperous society where people can flourish and the gospel message can be spread, where we can glorify God. And of course, if we don't live in a free society, we'll give him praise and we'll glorify him all the same. But pointing out the tyranny and the injustice of fallen earthly kingdoms just contrasts beautifully and necessarily with the perfection that is Christ and his kingdom. So in any direction it goes, the message remains fundamentally the same. If you want to support what we do here, go to libertarianchristians.com/donate. It says there on the bottom ticker screen. And appreciate all of you sticking with me for 3.5 hours now of live streaming across 2 different shows. As I always conclude by saying, live at peace, live for Christ. Take care.